And where are you? Give me thumbs up. Okay, so good morning, everybody from the most beautiful Colorado Springs today here in the USA. I am so excited and blessed to have all of you on the Zoom, and we literally are from all over. We have people from Canada in the house, people from here in the US, but I especially want to welcome everybody joining from South Africa, and you can wave at me and say hi. This Zoom is going to be incredible for all of you as we take a few moments and learn from an amazing man, kind, wise man about this awesome product. So before we start today, my name is Erika van der Merwe, and I live in Colorado, but I am a South African. I was born in South Africa, grew up in South Africa 2.5 years ago here to the beautiful Colorado Springs. And I was in the USA for about 3 months. Thing happened. My mother passed away quite suddenly due to cancer. Something that I expected. I did have an opportunity. Happens to all of us. You sit down and you do some serious math. And that was a pivotal moment for me. I'm very close to my parents. Realized that I needed to, in terms of the way I am taking care of myself. And one of the areas I needed to address was my weight. It wasn't that I was extremely overweight, but I didn't feel healthy, I didn't have energy, etc. So one of the products that I started using very aggressively this year was Slenderize, and the results that I had with this product just blew me away. I will be 46 in a few months, and I just found it just doesn't happen as easily as it did when you're younger, right? You just don't lose the weight so easily. And Slenderize truly helped me. I've lost a total of 24 pounds. And I feel fantastic. I was just sharing with somebody what I love about Slenderize is, you guys, not only does it assist your body in balancing it out, but you actually reach your goal without feeling starved out or hungry. I've been feeding my body, I've been nourishing my system, and I've been losing weight. And so it really is an amazing product, and I can't wait for Dr. Ray to start and share with us. But I just want to check if Rick Redford is in the house, and I want to hand over to Rick. Okay, so maybe Rick is not on yet. Dr. Ray, may I have the honor to introduce you then to this awesome audience today. I want to thank you once again for being with us. What an amazing source of knowledge and wisdom you are for the whole of ARIIX. But I want to thank you for your heart towards South Africa and for taking the time to chat to us. So over to you, Dr. Ray.
Well, thank you very much. And I am going to start, and I'm going to share my screen here. And so I want you to be prepared for some very interesting information that we have. So let me just get started here. I want to, there we go. And so I just want people who aren't familiar with me to understand I'm a family physician. I actually graduated from the University of Colorado Medical School many years ago. I've actually been in family practice now for over 40 years. And one of the most difficult things that I deal with is the diabetes obesity epidemic. And it has become tremendous, a tremendous problem in these last 30, 40 years that I've been in practice. So in the mid 1990s, I started to really research this problem, and this is the information I'm going to share with you today. In fact, I spent over 3.5 years researching the medical literature in regards to the diabetes obesity epidemic and why people couldn't lose weight, the frustration and everything that's involved. Plus, it has so much to do with the way I treat medicine because I'm more into preventive and nutritional medicine now. And so I'm just going to go through this information with you, and you're going to find it very interesting, and you're going to hear some things you have not heard before. Because we don't talk a lot about it, but it is in the medical literature. In fact, in my book, Healthy for Life, I have over 30 pages of medical references that I have researched, and it's there. It's mainstream medicine. But what you need to know is the fact that, weight control is a major thing. In fact, now I'm going to give U.S. statistics. 2/3 of the adults and about 1/3 of our children today are considered to either be overweight or actually obese. Now, 30% of the Americans are trying to lose weight, and another 30% are at least trying to maintain their weight. So it's an issue in the United States. We in America spend over $30 billion each year on diets and weight control programs. But here's the real true and interesting fact is that even if you're able to lose weight on any diet, the medical literature shows in 1 year, 2/3 of the people gain that weight back. And within 2 years, 98% gain the weight back and much more. So when ARIIX looked at weight loss and they looked at lifestyles, the thing that they did want to do was just create another diet, because we know we have to understand why diets don't work. Now, trust me, that's not a picture of me. I don't have that much hair on my chest. But anyway, diets, the reason they don't work is because they're a short-term solution for a long-term problem. Now, when my patient would come in to me or anybody and say, "Oh, Dr. Strand, I'm going on such and such a diet." Well, I didn't care which diet they said they were going on. The connotation is, well, if you're going to go on a diet, somewhere in the future, you're going to be coming off that diet and usually returning to the poor lifestyles that got you into problem to begin with. Now, the other problem is the majority of diets that we are using today are not balanced. They'll either eliminate all the carbohydrates like Atkins, or they eliminate all the fats like Dr. Ornish diet. But you just can't stay on them long term. It is not healthy in spite of what everybody tries to tell you. But the main reason diets do not work is they do not tackle the core issue, the core problem of why we're gaining this weight, which is insulin resistance. And you're going to hear me talk about this. And all insulin resistance is the fact that because of our poor lifestyles over time, we become less sensitive to our own insulin. So we don't respond to it like we once did. We are resistant to insulin. And so let's just look at it. Now, it has been named a lot of different things. It's been called Syndrome X, the metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, insulin resistance syndrome, but it is a modern epidemic. And in fact, in the United States and Canada today, 25% of all adults already have the metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance. Another 25% of the adult population are in the early stages of developing the metabolic syndrome. See, you don't just wake up one day and you're diabetic or you have the metabolic syndrome. It takes years, and even 10 to 15 years of poor lifestyles before you finally tip over into this abnormal metabolic state. So that's 75 million Americans affected in total. Well, we also know it's a major issue in our children. About 1/3 of our children have this problem. This is why our Centers for Disease Control has projected that over 30% of the children born after the year 2000 will become diabetic, and nearly 50% if they happen to be Black or Hispanic. Now, that's a major issue when you understand diabetes. And we're starting to see children who once 98% of the time got type 1 insulin or diabetes, which used to be called juvenile diabetes. Now about 50% of our children actually get type 2 diabetes, which is the old adult onset diabetes. So it's become a major issue. So let me describe what the metabolic syndrome really is. It's a constellation of problems that have been associated with underlying insulin resistance. This is Gerald Raven's work out of the University of Stanford, or Stanford University. He's a physician researcher. But what we see is because of the underlying insulin resistance, we gain this unusual amount of weight around our middle. Our blood pressure starts to go up. Our good HDL cholesterol starts to come down. And that LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, starts to go up. But our triglycerides, that other fat in the blood, go shooting up. And we become significantly, we have a significant increased risk of developing both heart disease and diabetes. And so if you look at this and what I deal with in my medical practice, I would say 60% of my patients I deal with these problems in one way or the other. So I want to go back and just give you some science, how we got here. We have always taught, and I don't know what they do in South Africa, but in the United States, our registered dietitians still promote and teach a concept called simple sugar versus complex carbohydrates. You see, carbohydrates are simply a long chain of sugar. The longer the chain of sugar, we start to call those complex carbohydrates. The shorter chain, like glucose or table sugar, is a short chain, and we call those simple sugars. Well, in 1901, this theory came out. Well, since the shorter chains of sugar become, this breaks down and becomes sugar in our blood, or glucose, it was a feeling that the shorter the chain, the quicker it would raise your blood sugar. Well, the complex carbohydrates would instead break down much slower. And so what happened is that it wouldn't raise your blood sugar as much. And I'll share why that's an important finding. But in 1981, a researcher named Dr. David Jenkins, actually out of the University of Toronto Medical School, thought he would challenge this conventional wisdom of this 120-year-old theory. Back then, it was 80 years old. But he simply took participants in clinical trials and gave them a particular carbohydrate. He might have given them white bread, or he might have given them a potato, or he might have given them rice, or cherries, or apple. All these are complex carbohydrates, but then he would actually give them a load and measure their rise in blood sugar and compare it to getting straight glucose, because that's what it all becomes. And he developed the concept called glycemic index. And I know many of you have heard of this, but I want you to understand what he really did. So at first, he took people and just gave them straight glucose, and he followed the rise in blood sugar. And then he gave glucose a glycemic index of 100. Then what he did is he took, for this example, he took sweet cherries. And since sweet cherries, he gave them a similar same amount of calories, grams of sweet cherries, and it only equaled 22%. It raised blood sugars 22% as fast as glucose. So therefore, he gave sweet cherries a glycemic index of 20. He checked many carbohydrates, and this is just a simple representative foods. Now you see glucose here has a glycemic index of 100. Well, the baked potato has a glycemic index of 85. Cornflakes, 84. If you would take all the rices, they're all in the 80s. Whole wheat bread was 71. White bread is 70. But here, look at this simple sugar, table sugar, which is only 2 molecules, fructose and glucose, had a glycemic index of 61. Peaches, you know, a glycemic index of only 28. Sweet cherries, as I showed you, 22. Black beans, 20. So then we started to categorize the glycemic index, and we felt that, you know, any glycemic index below 50, 55 was low glycemic. Between 55 and 70 was medium glycemic index. Over 70 was high glycemic. Now, here's the thing that is really interesting I want you to focus on. Look at table sugar 61. So he proved that bread, flour, rice, cereals, potatoes actually spike your blood sugar faster than if you're slapping or spooning table sugar onto your tongue. Now, this is very important because of the USDA food pyramid and all of this. I'll show you how this becomes a major issue. Now, I want to show you why this is important, because 85 to 90% of all carbohydrates consumed in both the US and Canada, and I'm going to assume it's similar in South Africa, are high glycemic. Well, everybody wakes up every morning with a fasting blood sugar. And so the black dashed line across is the level of your blood sugar when you wake up in the morning before you've eaten anything. So people go out, and we've seen it, and they'll have a bagel and orange juice and a cup of coffee or whatever, and their blood sugar will spike very, very rapidly. Well, the body must control blood sugar in a very narrow range because our brain thinks on blood sugar. So when this blood sugar goes shooting up, which is the red line, we find two things happen. One, that rapidly rising blood sugar in your bloodstream causes inflammation of your arteries and causes important. Well, we know that this thickened arterial wall and do its job, but also that rapidly rising blood sugar stimulates the release of insulin, which is really your storage hormone. Now, insulin's job is to transport that blood sugar or that glucose into the cell to be utilized either glycogen or fat. Well, in the case when it rises rapidly, we actually overstimulate the release of insulin, and we drive that blood sugar back down below the fasting blood sugar. You see that dip? It goes down, and that drops down. Now, if the body were to allow that to keep going down, 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 you would not only get a shaky weakness, and you literally can have a seizure. So when that blood sugar drops down low, this stimulates the release of your stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, glucagon, to drive that blood sugar back up to normal. The problem is, even though it finally gets back up to normal, what we find is now you have these high stress hormone levels in your bloodstream. That sets off an uncontrollable hunger. In the medical field, we call it hyperphagia. In other words, a natural physiologic response to spiking your blood sugar and then dropping down into the low blood sugar range or hypoglycemic range. What that does is it sets off, you have to eat again. You have no choice. And you usually crave another high glycemic meal, and you keep spiking that blood sugar over and over, day in, day out. And it's kind of like hollering wolf. Over time, you just don't respond to the insulin like you did 10 years ago. And so that is insulin resistance. But it also sets off a carbohydrate addiction. It's a true addiction, much like tobacco or alcohol or certain drugs. It is, I call it a carbohydrate addiction. It's truly there. So we know this sets off big eating because Dr. Ludwig did a study on 12-year-old children, and he divided them in two groups, and he gave one group a high glycemic breakfast, which happened to be instant oatmeal. And I'll share that here in a bit, why that's high glycemic. But then the other group, the control group, had a low glycemic breakfast, which was a veggie omelet and fruit. Then he said, kids, eat whatever you want the rest of the day. And what he found is the kids that had the high glycemic meal compared to those that had the low glycemic meal ate 80% more calories during that day. He switched the groups. It wasn't the groups of people, it was the food. And so these high glycemic meals promote this carbohydrate cravings and what I call carbohydrate addiction, and we eat more. This is a very key thing, that what we have been calling all these years emotional eating or cravings really is set off just by eating the wrong foods. So let's look at the USDA food pyramid with this knowledge. Now we put, whoops, let me back up here. I got a little head here. Let me back up here. What I want to show you is what is the top of the food pyramid. Well, it's fats, oils, and sweets because it's based on this 1901 theory, okay? So we know where we put sugar. Oh, sugar's bad for us. We got the sugar blues. We got books written on sugar. But look at the base of our food pyramid. What do we have? You want 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, pasta. Now, I've just told you that's worse than sugar, okay? And yet this is what we have been promoting for the last 50 years. And so I believe the medical community has actually created the diabetes obesity epidemic because of these recommendations. So what you do is you find this is the way the food pyramid should look. You should have whole fruits and vegetables at the base and have good fat and good protein. And then at the peak, use sugar sparingly and almost avoid all of these high glycemic foods. And I'll teach you more as we get into this, how you make this practical in your lifestyle. But this is where the problem is. This is what we deal with. Now, when I was in my practice, I had a pharmaceutical rep, and I'm sure you have those in South Africa, but they're drug dealers, come in, legal though, come in and try to sell their medications. Well, one of them, this is just a graph, one of the pharmaceutical reps gave me on a diabetes drug called Avandia. And here it is, it shows you in a nutshell everything I'm trying to tell you in regards to the insulin resistance, which eventually leads to diabetes. Now, if you go over here where it says normal, and you could go back on that, well, this whole graph is probably 25 years. So this is a 25-year span, but you could go back another 5 or 10 years prior to this graph starting, and you're normal. Yeah, you're eating poor, you might not be having the activity you should, but over time, you eventually become insulin resistant, which is shown here by the orange line, okay? So then you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state called the metabolic syndrome or prediabetes, but the underlying problem is insulin resistance. And it slowly gets worse. Well, the body compensates for this problem by actually making more insulin, which is the green line. So insulin production goes up. That's how the body responds to insulin resistance. But as this blood insulin level starts to go up, as long as these two lines parallel, look at the blood sugar, which is your blue line. Blood sugars are going to remain fairly steady. And in medicine, most doctors will just check your blood sugar. You know, and if your blood sugar is normal, hey, they're happy. There's no problem. And that's what has happened all these years. But now we know that as blood insulin levels go up, you tip over into an abnormal metabolic state and you start gaining this unusual weight around your middle. Your blood pressure starts to go up. Your cholesterols go up. The bad cholesterol goes up. The good cholesterol comes down. The other fat triglycerides go up. You start having more inflammation in your body, in your arteries, and your arteries literally begin to age a third faster than they should, just as soon as you tip over into this, which makes you very high risk for a heart attack or stroke. But eventually, after about 12, 15 years in this state, look at the green line, the old body just can't keep making that much blood sugar. or insulin. So the blood insulin starts to drop, and then whoops, there goes the blood sugar. And it's in this area over here where the physician finally diagnoses you with diabetes, okay? So you've had 12, 15 years of this accelerated aging of your arteries. We finally diagnose it in our office, but studies show the first day I diagnose a patient in my office with having type 2 diabetes, we find that 60% already have major hardening of the arteries or cardiovascular disease. We're so late in doing this. So what has happened is that the endocrinologists, the diabetes specialists have said, oh, you know, they did a consensus opinion back in 2008. This is about 15 years after I'd been writing about this. They finally agreed, we need to be treating this pre-diabetes early when you first tip over, as aggressively as we do diabetes, because if we wait till you become diabetic, it's just too late. That's why 80% of our patients who are diabetic die prematurely still from a cardiovascular event, a heart attack, a stroke, maybe an amputation or kidney failure. But the point I'm trying to get to is that has not changed over the last half century. And the reason is we're treating diabetes too late. We need to recognize the pre-diabetes. And that's what this is all about. And what I did back in 1996, I started to research this. And what I found was that it was poor lifestyles that was making us less sensitive to our own insulin. Perhaps if we incorporated healthy lifestyles that improved insulin sensitivity, we could reverse this problem. And I called it the Healthy for Life program. I did 3 clinical trials. The last one was done at the University of Colorado Medical School by an endocrinologist named my theory actually was. And so let me just get into some of the details. When you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, a calorie is no longer a calorie. Now, this goes against the weight loss industry's mantra for the last 50 to 75 years. Oh, calories in has to be less than calories out, or you can't lose weight. But let me tell you, when people tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, they can't utilize calories like they did before because the muscle becomes insulin resistant first. And why is that important? It's important by the fact that the muscle normally takes up and utilizes 90+% of every calorie from meals or snacks and uses it as energy. But when it becomes insulin resistant, it no longer takes up all that. And so now many of the calories that you used to utilize for energy is now being diverted to the fat cells of the abdomen. And insulin's job in this place is to convert that glucose as fat and then block the release of that fat. That's why you start gaining this unusual amount of weight around your middle. So I tell you, I've heard this story hundreds of times in my practice. A patient comes in, they may be 30-year-old lady or man, and says, you know, I've never had a weight problem. You know, I don't exercise much, but I eat. I haven't changed anything though. I haven't changed my activity level. I haven't changed my eating habits. But last year I put on 10 pounds. And this year I'm already up 15 pounds and it's only mid-year. I heard that hundreds of times. What happened? Well, most doctors say, well, I think it's just because your metabolism is slowing down or something like that. I used to say that. But what has happened is you weren't insulin resistant initially, but then eventually you tipped over in this abnormal metabolic state. And a calorie then is no longer a calorie. So you eat the same way, but now many of your calories are being diverted to fat cells of the abdomen and you gain this weight. So what you find when you're in this state, you hold on to fat like a sponge holds on to water. So you have a resistance to weight loss. You might lose a few pounds, but boom. And as you get older, you can't even lose that. It just goes up. This is the problem I've run with my patients. It happens in pregnancy. I did OB for 23 years. My women may not have been diabetic or gestational diabetes, but they gained all this weight, couldn't lose it. Well, they were tipping over into insulin resistance because once you become pregnant, you're more set up for that problem. So what I learned is that we have to teach our patients how not to spike their blood sugar. So let's look at this graph again. So if we teach people to not, not spike their blood sugar, but eat a low glycemic meal, look what happens. First of all, this is a kind of a blue-green line on your screen. What you find is that it goes up slowly. So it isn't causing that inflammation, or what I call glycemic stress, to your arteries. But also, you're not going to overstimulate the release of insulin, but you're going to do it properly. It'll come down, but it comes down to the fasting blood sugar. You do not tip into this low blood sugar range that sets off the stress hormone response. And get hungry again, but you just eat another low glycemic meal, and it just goes on. The medical literature shows you do this one time, blood insulin levels begin to drop because you become more sensitive. You have a second meal, it drops more. So it affects insulin resistance in a certain mechanism. So just learning to eat in such a way as you do not spike your blood sugar goes a long ways in significantly improving insulin sensitivity. So that is why ARIIX developed Pure Nourish. It is key for your success. In the clinical trials, we use these meal replacements for 2 meals a day, then taught our patients to eat 1 healthy low glycemic meal and 2 low glycemic snacks. I like eating 5 meals a day. But Pure Nourish, we just put in 2 scoops of water in almond milk or coconut milk, along with some frozen fruit twice a day. Now, why is that? It's low glycemic, it's gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free. It's got its own digestive enzymes, probiotics. It's a wonderful meal replacement, and it's actually low caloric and slenderized. Now, I also add my Giving Greens in there. It doesn't add to this, but I use it in my medical practice as a behavioral modification tool. I literally get my patients to begin experiencing a low glycemic lifestyle way to do this. Now, I'm also, in the medical literature, there are thousands of studies that show certain micronutrients taken and as a nutritional supplement improves insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. So there's vanadium, chromium, magnesium, selenium, vitamin E, vitamin C, grapeseed extract. I mean, all these studies. And so what we find is when I recommend what I call cellular nutrition, I talked about that last time I visited with you, but the ARIIX Optimals, you're going to find that it contains all of this, but you put it together, you get synergy, and it improves insulin sensitivity, but from a different mechanism. Supplementation is critical to the underlying problem for the obesity diabetes epidemic. Now, I even like adding omega, but basically, the optimals, vitamins, antioxidants, omega Q is great. It lowers inflammation, but at least I like to get my patients on the optimals slenderized program. Now, the other thing that's key is exercise. Now, what we find is one of the hallmark reasons we become less sensitive to our own insulin is because we are inactive. But I try to encourage my patients to build up to 30 minutes of modest aerobic activity 5 days a week. Now, not every day, but 5 days a week. Now, that could be simply walking briskly, riding a bike, swimming, hiking, tennis. It doesn't matter. The only thing the body cannot handle is inactivity. You get moving, but you don't have to be a superstar. In fact, there's some danger to over-exercise. So you want to do modest, consistent exercise. But the medical literature shows you significantly improve insulin sensitivity from a different mechanisms. So we got 3 different mechanisms of improving this serious problem that's attacking our health throughout. So ARIIX, has developed what we call first step therapy. And you'll start to understand it's not just about weight loss, but we know healthy lifestyles improves insulin sensitivity. Since insulin resistance is a result of poor lifestyles, it only makes sense that firmly establishing healthy lifestyles that improve insulin sensitivity is the answer. And this is the foundation for your transformation story. And we call it ARIIX's first step therapy, Nutrify plus Slenderize, okay? Now, I'm just gonna stop here. Well, I'm gonna go on here. What is first step therapy? Let me just define it for you. As a physician, the medical community is encouraging me all the time. If I have a patient come in who has elevated blood pressure or elevated cholesterol, early diabetes or heart disease or osteoporosis or hypertension, that we should give these patients a trial of healthy lifestyles as our first step to therapy instead of writing a prescription. So what I do routinely is offer my patients a 12-week trial of these healthy lifestyles. If I find any of these as their first step to therapy, unless there's a serious reason that I need to start treating, but most of the time, like I said, these takes years to develop, and if you're diagnosing them, you see it. And so this is where ARIIX fits. Now, what I have told you that once they come back, second step therapy is using medication. I'm going to use statin drugs as a good example. Now, in the United States, we advertise, and I don't know the South African government how they do this, but in the United States, FDA has approved statin drugs as second step therapy, not first step therapy, because you get an advertisement. If you want to take Crestor or Zocor or Lipitor, they'll say, once you have failed diet and exercise, then you take the medication, because that's the way it's approved by the FDA. It should not be first step therapy. But doctors are lazy. Doctors don't believe their patients will make lifestyle changes. And even if they do, they don't think they'll be clinically effective. So I just wanted you to see that. But this is where I, as a physician, have been working. And this is why it's exciting for me. So let's talk now about ARIIX's weight loss system. Now, it is a 4-part comprehensive lifestyle program, not just a diet. So I get people on ARIIX's SlenderX and Accelerate, which again, I'll show you in a minute, improves insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. We want a healthy diet, one that contains those good proteins, good fats, and those good low glycemic carbohydrates that do not spike your blood sugar. I like the ARIIX Optimals and or Omega Q, and modest exercise. That's what it is. Now, why is this important? Because we're trying to improve the underlying problem. So it's really, this is their management. Now, some of my pictures might be a little old here, but forgive me for that. But this is how we developed. We did not want to develop another diet that people are going to go off and come back on. This is not what we wanted to develop. Now, SlenderX is a unique homeopathic drug containing 10 different ingredients. Several of the homeopathic ingredients increase fat release from your fat cells by improving insulin sensitivity. That's what I have seen in my medical practice. So I find this is a significant thing. There's 2 others ingredients that suppress your appetite, and anybody that takes SlenderX, they can feel their diet gets, they just aren't as hungry. They know it. And another 2 increase your metabolism. Now, anytime you challenge lifestyles and try to make these behavioral modifications, it causes a lot of stress. So the companion to SlenderX is Accelerate. It's high in vitamin B12 for increased energy and metabolism, along with the biotin and Ayurvedic herbs ashwagandha and rhodiola. And the reason that's important is they're calmers. They tend to make you relax, and people really enjoy that, and it works wonderful together. And anybody who wants to challenge themselves, this is a great way, but it's not magic. You know, these are not magic. They're supportive, and they'll make these lifestyle changes easier. And what I found in my medical practice is it actually makes all the weight loss in that about twice as fast. Now, people don't mind that. They want quick results. And so that's what I found, because I was doing this program back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and we didn't have this. And so I was having success with the diet, exercise, and nutritional supplements before these even came along. But what I have found is it makes it easier, and it allows you to accomplish all these goals about twice as fast. And I think it's wonderful. Now, the keys to success is with the SlenderX is eating a low glycemic diet. Now, they find it works better if you do about 1,250 calories. But you also want to drink plenty of purified water. And we got purity water bottles, have it all. Nutritional supplements, you can add anything you want. You can have Restorix, you can use Rejuvenex, you can do Vanali, you can do any of these, but at least the ARIIX Optimals. If you want MOA, LIMO, I mean, I even think that Fucoiden straight is great. I don't even think there's any problem with burn. Trust me, I think but this is what's important. Now, I like Pure Nourish because the behavioral modification is the toughest thing in the world. And so I like using it, and start to get into modest aerobic exercise, at least 30 minutes, 5 times a week. But here's the key. You got to avoid those high glycemic foods, all breads, all flour, all rice, cereals, potatoes, even pasta and sugar. Now, I'm going to show you my 12-week basic Healthy for Life program that I have put up for you. And you can log on to this today. It's free. I've given it to the ARIIX. So the healthy, if you would just write this down, it's a behavioral modification program. It's healthyforlifeprogram.com. There's no cost. Once you go through, you'll see it costs you nothing. But it's a 12-week lifestyle program. It's essentially the online program I use, modified for ARIIX, that I used in my 3 clinical trials done under what they call IRBs, or the FDA certification. And so this is the program, and I just made it available to you. You'll get daily emails from me, daily tips to improve your lifestyle. You'll get weekly video or written education on all this stuff in more detail. There's helpful resources on the food database, over 1,400 foods, a glycemic index. You're going to learn a concept called glycemic load that's even more important. Menus, how to best utilize SlenderEyes. I've got or SlenderX, and I've got a 20-minute video there. Accountability, you'll have your own self-graded lifestyle journal. So every day you can log on and write down how you took your supplements, what you ate, did it spike your blood sugar, are you exercising, what are you drinking, and then you record it. And I want to share a little bit why I really recommend writing everything down in your lifestyle journal. When I started brought my patients into my waiting room, had a nutritionist come in and actually explain everything I've shared with you today. Then later, and I'd run their blood work, and I have to be honest, the results were very disappointing. And so I had 2 nurse practitioners. We'd been doing and developing this program. And so what I said to them, should we just give up or what? Well, we kind of decided we'd have everybody write down what they ate, what they drank, how they took their supplements, and then come in each week and show one of my nurse practitioners. Then I would see them back in 12 weeks, and the results were simply phenomenal. What was the difference? Well, I had gone from about 10 to 15% success to over 80 to 85% success just by doing this. All of a sudden, you're taking unconscious lifestyle habits and you're making them conscious. So I didn't have to ask for perfection. I just had to ask for honesty. And that's really what we did. And so what happened was people began changing. I'll tell you, behavior modification is the most difficult thing a physician must deal with. But it worked. And the longer I would stay with them, it just became part of a lifestyle. Their appetite came down, not only with the SlenderX, but also just by eating a low glycemic diet, your natural appetite comes down. You start eating healthy foods. You get out of that carbohydrate cravings and addiction. You start feeling better. Your blood pressure starts coming down. Your cholesterol, triglycerides come down. Your blood sugars come down. All of this starts to happen. And so this is what it is. So ARIIX's weight management system is rapid weight loss by the using SlenderX drops. It's a low glycemic diet, exercise, at least the optimals, to improve insulin sensitivity, which allows you to tip back into a normal metabolic state and you lose fat. Why? In every one of the clinical trials, I actually saw the insulin levels drop 50% on average. Remember, when you tip over, the blood insulin levels go up. But when you start to improve, they go back down, and you literally tip back into this into a normal metabolic state, and you begin releasing fat, because insulin really is your storage hormone. It makes you hold on to fat like a sponge holds on to water. But when you reverse it, you're not, my patients come in, oh, Dr. Strand, what's so hard about never going hungry, feeling great, having more energy, more focus, seeing your health parameters improve, and then you begin losing weight and you're not trying. Why aren't they trying? The reason they're not trying is the fact that they're not trying to use willpower. That's the problem. You just can't grind it out. You got to change, because it's that's setting off that uncontrollable hunger. It's when you got to eat, you got to eat. It's just like when you have to go to the bathroom, you got to go to the bathroom. It's a natural physiologic response to spiking your blood sugar. So in closing, ARIIX's weight management system is not a diet, but a lifestyle. That's very important. We don't want to, you're doing this the rest of your life. I mean, if you think you're going to go on this, lose weight, and then go off, you're just going to gain it back. It's not healthy. You're better off stay heavy. But weight loss is great. However, keeping it off is priceless. And that is what is key. Now, I'm going to show you these again. I have my book, Healthy for Life, but it's so hard to get it around the world and that. And I am working to get it online, so it's an ebook. I haven't accomplished that, but here, if you go to healthyforlifeprogram.com, this is free to you. It's a 12-week program, and you can get into it. Now, if someone is interested in doing this as their business and they want to become one of my certified lifestyle coaches, now this does cost money, but it's drstrandlifestylecoach.com. But what you do, it's a self-directed, self-paced lifestyle coaching program with all this much more information. And then you're tested after each section, then you go on to the next one, and then there's a final test. And once you actually have passed that, then you'll get a certification, that you can frame that you're one of Dr. Strand's certified lifestyle coaches. But also, I will give you access for this is a annual membership. So the first year, when you sign up, you can become certified. And the remainder of that year, you can have access to the back office to my Healthy for Life program, where you will get your own certified lifestyle coach code. And you share that with anybody you're working with around the world. And then when they fill out their journal or they log on, they'll have an opportunity to put in your code so we know where it came from. And then what happens is that you can actually see when you log on which I will give you a log on to that back office. You can see everybody that's used that code, and they appear in alphabetical order. You can see how they've done right away, program to date, last week, the last month. You can click and actually see their lifestyle journal. You can communicate with them. And this is the accountability that is so important to help people make these lifestyle changes. I've used this program in doctors' offices all over. People will start not only to lose weight, but they're going to see their health parameters, their blood pressure, their cholesterol, their triglycerides, their blood sugars, all this improve. And so that's really the name of the game. And I just, it's an introduction, but these are resources. If you want to follow up, you sure can. And I guess with that, I'm going to just turn it back and let you guys answer or give me some questions or whatever you want. And I'll quit sharing here.
Dr. Strand, thank you so much. This is incredibly helpful information. We have also the privilege of having Rick Redford on our Zoom this morning. And Rick is going to field, he is the president of North America. I call him the president of everything, Rick Redford. And he is going to field some questions to you this morning. Rick, are you on?
I am. I'm right here.
There he is. Hey,
Thank you.
Rick. So
Hey.
glad you could jump in and join us with Dr. Strand. We have a few questions that we've sent to you, and we'd love for you to kind of field some of those questions to Dr. Strand, who I know is a good friend of yours.
He is. So you want me to take these questions that you wrote?
Do you want me to run them?
No, well, you know what? No, I'm happy to do that. I just think that's amusing. I appreciate you using my radio
I wanted
announcer
to make
voice.
sure you were okay with all the questions we were asking.
Oh, I was going to go way off track here, but no, I will. I'm happy to do that. Dr. Strand. Hey, Ray, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Rick?
Good. Good to see you. And again, I apologize. I communicated to Dr. Strand the wrong time yesterday because I thought he was on Central Time. And thank you for rearranging your schedule. That was totally my bad.
Well, Tammy lives in Minnesota. See, South Dakota, the timeline goes right down the middle. And so we're on Mountain Time. You get to Sioux Falls in that area, and they're on Central Time. So,
that probably won't be the last time I make that mistake,
no,
but I'll try to remember.
There you go.
Because I know you're east of me. Anyway, so what's the difference? You know, we have the Slenderize and we have the AM and PM drops in other places in the world. What are the main differences? What are the similarities?
Well, let me go. The homeopathic drops are homeopathic, and that really differentiates the day and night drops.
Yep.
The day and night drops are nutritionals that are trying to create a similar response from a different method, and accomplish the same goal to give support again. Remember, none of these drops are magic. And everybody says, well, I'll take SlenderX, but I won't do the other things. Trust me, they will not have success. And I have learned this. If I get my patients to make one of these lifestyle changes, I see some improvement. If I get them to do 2 of the 3, I see a little more improvement. If I get them to do all 3, diet, exercise, and supplement, the results are phenomenal. Now, if I use a day and night drops or Slenderize, I find that it happens much more rapidly and it's easier for them. So it's supportive. And so because homeopathics can't get into every market,
that's right.
ARIIX developed the day and night drops, and they do increase metabolism. They do improve, like I told you, nutritionally. There's more to improve insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism, but it also suppresses appetite. And so they're trying to do the same thing from different mechanisms, but it's still supportive. And if you use it with the program, you'll always have success.
Yeah, and that's the main reason is what Dr. Strand said, that homeopathics are not registerable in many markets. And so that's why we have 2 different forms. Actually, around the world, if you look at it, the day and night drops outsell Slenderize. In North America, that's not the case because we don't really have day and night drops here, but around the world they do. Does Slenderize, or the Slenderize system, stabilize hormones that will also assist in mood swings and depression?
It is more the accelerate. Believe it or not, I have my bipolar, manic depressive, depressed patients. They love accelerate. And it's the aromatic herbs. Uh, Now, as far as hormonal balancing, and I know Dr. Ginger talks about, I'm approaching more from a medical physician perspective. What you're really balancing is insulin hormone. Insulin's a hormone, and there's a lot of other things. And we think on blood sugars, and I deal with even children do really well with this program. And if I get ADHD children or anybody that has an attention deficit problem, and because we think on blood sugar, you'll start to see they do very well. So there's a balancing of everything, but it's really the calming effect and all that. Believe me or not, I've had my patients, they will not, when they go through the program, they will not give up their accelerate. They stay with it, Rick. And that's why we sell it separately, at least in the North America, I know.
Well, I do the same thing. What it does for me personally, from a craving standpoint, and from a portion control,
Oh yeah.
my biggest issue. So now there's also heat has ingredients in there from a hormone balancing standpoint that if I were you, and I'm not a doctor, I only play one on TV, but Dr. Strand, would you combine the Slenderize system and the new Elite as well for that sort of balancing?
Yes, there's a lot of things you can do. You know, cost is always an issue. So I'm always relating what you have to do to have success. But I have a lot of people that add Rejuvenex, they use RestoreX. I like the Elite, because people, they want to have energy, they want to have focus. And I've even talked to them about Fucoidan. They're familiar with that. And I've seen results using that, and we're now getting some more experience with that. I don't even think burn's a problem, but I want you at least to take the optimals because we're trying to correct the underlying problem, because I'm interested in keeping the weight off. Once you do this, you keep the weight off unless you go back and just let Katie bar the door and you just get back into the old lifestyles.
And that's actually, I think, one of the greatest selling features of our Slenderize program is how many people who have lost weight a year ago, 2 years ago, have still kept it off. That is so unusual in the world of, as Dr. Strand said, this isn't about dieting. This is about lifestyle changes. Yeah,
so I agree with that. And that's why when someone is dealing, I still use medication, Rick, but I use it as a last resort, not a first choice. I always offer them first step therapy. And people are going to come to you, and it's safe. We're not treating a disease. We're recommending healthy lifestyles. That's all it is. But I try to explain to people when they see these transformation stories. Oh, I not only lost weight, but I got off this and I got off that and I did this. And well, you start to understand why that happens. But that isn't our decision. That's between them and their personal physician. But I've had a lot of diabetics really improve, and what happens is their blood sugars improve, and they've got to back off some of their meds, and their doctor's got to take them off. They're all thrilled, but we're not treating a disease. We're just doing healthy lifestyles.
Yeah, agreed. It says, why do you have to take the drops 20 minutes before eating? I'm going to say, why do you recommend? Because these are volunteers. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
Why do you recommend taking it 20 minutes before eating?
Well, so it has a chance to work. They are a homeopathic drug, and any drug doesn't work instantly. And so if you take it, and so when you're thinking of going to a meal, you start preparing a meal, think of your drops, just put them in then. Or if you're waking up, you're going to have breakfast, use them. And the reason is then it has more effect. And anybody that does it, they know. Now, does that mean you couldn't take it as you're eating? No, you can take it anytime. But that's why you do it. You just give them a chance to work. And even with the day and night drops, it's the same thing.
And that also, the follow-up to that is some people only eat 2 meals a day. And so can you still take the drops 3 times a day if you're only eating 2 meals a day?
Sure. You can, it's all, everybody does it differently. I'm a fan of eating more frequently, because a study where they took the same amount of calories and gave it in 2 meals versus 10 meals. Now, you wouldn't do that, but the people who ate the same calories twice a day gained an average of like 10, 15 pounds. Those who ate the same amount of food 10 times lost an average of 10 to 15 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of just eating twice a day. Everybody thinks, well, I'm doing better. It doesn't work because you're challenging the body. The body does better. Like I recommend 5 meals a day, and that's what we did in our clinical trials. But that's my thing. But anybody can do anything they want, and you're still going to have success, just not as much or as quick.
Yeah, and my problem, and this is total justification. My problem is I don't ever take time to eat breakfast. Although when I do, it's my favorite meal of any time. But so what I do is I take the drops in the morning before I leave to come to work, because it does give me a sense of I'm less hungry. It just does. It curbs my appetite to some extent. So because I don't usually get around to eating breakfast, and so I take them in the morning, then I do take them before lunch and dinner. So that's just me.
Right. And that's good. And the other thing is I always have a drink still today, even though I don't have my weight's down. I'm comfortable. I have a Pure Nourish every morning. I'm not using Slenderize or Accelerate now because I don't need to. But when I start my day with that Pure Nourish, I can't tell you how much better I feel. And I'm not really like breakfast in the morning, but I take that drink and it's wonderful. It sets up my whole day.
Yeah, I'm with you. My wife, when I was working from home, I got it delivered to my office in the house every morning, and it was just, I got spoiled. All right. One last question. If a child wants to use Slenderize, should they consume less quantities?
Depends. Kids are growing. I don't worry. And now, Rick, you may shoot me for this, but in my I don't ever weigh my patients because I don't want weight, to be a motivator, because sooner or later, you're either not going to lose as much as you think you should, or you're not going to lose any, or you're actually going to gain weight. And, this program doesn't work for me. I just have learned I don't do that. The other thing is, calories. I don't count calories. I don't count grams of fat. I don't count this. It will happen naturally. You start using SlenderX and you start eating, you're going to have trouble getting in the 1,250 calories. But kids should be the same way. I deal with a lot of really heavy children and their weight. And you start to do this and they have the most miraculous change. I never tell them to count calories, just eat the right food. So if you're hungry, don't ever go hungry. If you're hungry, just eat another meal or snack that won't spike your blood sugar. That's all I do. And it works. So I'm just not a fan of counting all this stuff. You have to do it legally. If we don't recommend 1,250 calories, and you're going to do better rather than eating 2,500 calories. But the point is, it will naturally come down. It takes 5 to 10 days to get out of this carbohydrate addiction or cravings going this program. And you'll just see it. You just don't do it. But here's an interesting thing. If you spike your blood sugar one time, the medical literature shows you'll set off this uncontrollable hunger for 2 to 3 days, just one time. So it's easy to break this. So you eat it, and then what happens? A high glycemic meal, and for 2 or 3 days, you're kind of like, I need more food. And you got to get back on track. And that's why we say if you're going to cheat in like at the end of a meal. I talk about on my websites, mixed meals and getting good protein and good low glycemic. And then you can have some high glycemic snack or something if you're just craving it, and it won't spike your blood sugar. And then you don't set off this uncontrollable hunger. But that's mine. And no, kids can eat what they want, eat for natural, and if they're eating right, they can eat what they want. If they're eating the right food, their appetite will come down, and they do wonderful.
Awesome. Tammy, that was the list that you created for me to ask, and I'm happy to join the call.
Well, really, I'm so glad you joined the call because we love having you on, and you were just here in Colorado Springs this last weekend. and building up our teams and encouraging everyone on our amazing products and our amazing business. So thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
For jumping on so we could see your face. And Dr. Strand, you truly are an amazing man, and I love your presence. I love your you know, if I were in South Dakota, you'd be my doctor. I can tell you that. You have a wealth of information, but I love the passion that you carry to really see people have transformations and really see their lives and their health improve. And to me, you know, my son is in medical school, Dr. Strand. So I hope that he will be half the doctor that you are and will be able to encourage many people as you have in better health, weight loss, and in how ARIIX has changed and transformed so many people's lives. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us today, giving us your time and your focus. You are a blessing and a gift to everyone today. And we want to thank everyone for joining us today, for your time. I know you've learned a lot. Again, Dr. Strand has a website, healthyforlifeprogram.com, that you can jump onto. And I think someone has put it in the chat here. If you're having if you're trying to get it, maybe Ant or Erika could put it in the chat one more time. And I look forward to jumping on that as well. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Strand. And we will look forward to seeing all of you at the top, and have an absolute fabulous day. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye for
Doctor.
now.
Thank you.